First up is Charlie Hess. You might say that Charlie was a late bloomer. He was a bachelor until age 49 when he met his wife, Trudy. He and Trudy have been members of First Unitarian for several years and are active as greeters and teachers. Charlie is also passionate about the environment and has a special love of orchids. The title of his talk is From Passion to Compassion. Please welcome Charlie Hess.
Well, this certainly looks like a compassionate group. At least I think you are. Well, better yet, how many of you really think you're compassionate? Ah, a pretty good crowd. Well, that's what do you really know what being compassionate means? Well, I tell you what, a few hands. I tell you what, there's a trusty way to find out. Brought my cell phone, I didn't turn it off, but I'll just see if I can hook this in. I learned that from Stephen Colbert. He showed me how to do this. I bet there's a way I can get this up on the screen. Let me see. Wow, most of you have answered that question. Here we are, I got the definition up there. Compassion. It looks like it has three parts. Deep sympathy and sorrow for another. The second part is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. Well, let's just test that out and see how that works. That's a pretty good definition. I think we could go by that. Here's a typical picture we see all the time. This one happens to be flooding victims in Malawi. Well, you look at something like that, let's put it to the test. Stricken by misfortune? I think we could all agree to that. Deep sympathy? Sure, I think that's what we feel when we see this kind of picture. And last, the desire to help. But how do you help? I think that's the rub. Few of you could go there to Malawi to physically load sandbags or whatever to help. So your other choice is left to maybe send in a donation. Well, that works too, but I don't think you really get a feeling of involvement with that. Send that check off and you're done, you've been compassionate. But I want to propose something a little more deep than that. Here's what I think you should do to be compassionate. Take what you're passionate about, let your values direct you to a compassionate objective. Well, what are you compassionate about? Certainly that's going to be the first problem. For me, I never felt like I was particularly compassionate about anything. In fact, my passion really was kind of handed to me. About 35 years ago, I was working with Texas Instruments, and I got an opportunity to work at our manufacturing plant in the Philippines, up in Baguio City. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's delightful. It's a mile high up in the mountains, cool weather year-round, no heating, no air conditioning in the houses. You didn't need it. It was a paradise. Everything was new and exciting to me, and I just fell in love with the place. I really did. What I didn't know is I would also fall in love with my first orchid. Well, let me tell you the story of this. I was staying at the hotel in Baguio. It was a resort town, but we had our manufacturing plant. We were starting up there. I was exploring around the hotel, went up to the balcony, and the gardener had this beautiful botanical garden up on top of the hotel, and I discovered this orchid, and it was so intriguing to me. It just blew me away. I was so fascinated to think that something like this could be in this new land I had discovered. Well, I looked around for a few months, and sure enough, I started collecting more and more of the local species. I think you could say I was really hooked. In fact, I had so many orchids, I had to leave the hotel and move to a house to where I could build a greenhouse. So here I am with my greenhouse, and my collection of orchids, and I have to say I took many brave, daring trips to the local flower market. That's where I got my orchids. You really couldn't find any of them in the natural habitat. And certainly the areas that I could go to were far more dangerous than I would want to go, so I got mine at the local markets. Well, let's fast forward 5 years. Yes, I spent 5 years in the Philippines. I brought my collection back, legal to import it with all the proper licenses, so I brought my collection back. I had all these beautiful species there, many species. I also had a lot of hair back then, too. Well, sad to say, I've lost a little bit of each. Still got a little hair left. Still have some of the species left. I love them. I take care of them. Many of them grow. I still have many of them that are over 20 years old. And I've gotten quite involved with the orchid societies locally, and this has quite been satisfying to me. It was a real passion, and you can say, who couldn't be passionate about something that beautiful? So these are some of my species I brought back from the Philippines. But being passionate about this is really not making a difference. I certainly found my passion in the orchids, but there had to be more. I discovered this artist. Her name is Margaret Mee. She lived in Brazil for 30 years, if you can believe that, and made 15 trips into the Amazon. Very daring woman, but most of all, she painted beautiful portraits of orchids that she found in the wild along the riverbanks in the Amazon. Beautiful, beautiful work. Some of the most world-famous orchid paintings that you can imagine, and she's someone that lived in our time. Well, this was very inspiring to me. I have prints of these two pictures. I started painting orchids myself. This was in 2003. I had retired from TI, had some time. I started painting. Well, I didn't just pick up a paintbrush. I had some talent, but I really got it the easy way. I inherited my talent for art. My mom was a very well-known sculptor. She has sculptures all over the United States at universities and corporations, and she made many small maquettes that were quite popular. She was very successful. I had to do something with my art, my artistic ability, so I took up painting orchids, and orchids are the only thing I paint. I mean, that's my passion. Well, I started exhibiting at art shows, won a few ribbons, and was having a lot of fun. I've painted probably over 40 pictures. I'm still not there yet. You know, I've got another passion, but nothing that really makes an impact. Well, a couple of things happened. I learned how to make prints of my orchids, my watercolors. So I started selling these at shows. Trudy started making note cards for me. Happy birthday, Trudy. Today's her birthday. I found out that I could raise money to support Rainforest Trust, Orchid Conservation Alliance, two great organizations that are helping preserve orchids in the wild. Now, I didn't get to see those in the Philippines. They just weren't that many, and so many of the forests were already being taken down that it just looked like there were less and less. But I felt like I was making a difference, and I also started giving talks on conservation and working with the Rainforest Trust and Orchid Conservation Alliance. They send me brochures to hand out, and I raise money for them. I give 100% of anything that I sell to these organizations, and I'm just having a ball. In fact, I think I found my compassion. Well, it's compassion for vanishing habitats and their species. Well, we talked a little bit earlier, remember our definition of compassion? We showed that family, usually it's toward a person. Can you have compassion for the earth? Does that really work? Well, let's test this out. One of the projects that I was working on 2 years ago was raising money excuse me, for the Rainforest Trust in Brazil, for the Atlantic Rainforest in Brazil. This is a beautiful picture of the rainforest. Just to give you a perspective, this is a map of Brazil, and that yellow part is the Atlantic Rainforest. That's quite large. It's twice the size of Texas, if you can imagine that, all rainforest. Well, today, there's only 7% of that rainforest left. Stricken by misfortune? Well, I think you could certainly say that. Check. That's the first part of the definition. Here's the consequences of deforestation. On the left, rainforest. On the right, palm oil production. Anytime you're eating your Oreo cookies or other things that have palm oil in it, you can just think of that rainforest on the left that's gone now with plants raising the palm oil. This is one of the major problems confronting rainforests today, in that a lot of the land that's left is prime land for planting palm oil. So much of Indonesia is being wiped away at an accelerating rate now. It is certainly at crisis proportion now. Deep sympathy. Critical habitats are vanishing daily. I know many of you feel a sympathy as I do, and I think that certainly fits the definition of compassion. One last picture. I remember the artist, Margaret Mead, that I had a picture of earlier. She painted orchids in this place called Mato Grosso, which meant dense forest. That ought to give you a clue for the devastation confronted now. Here's your dense forest of soybean production in place. Most of this goes to China to feed pigs and chicken. It doesn't go to feed people. Strong desire to help. I think the desire to help is even stronger than ever before. So the last part of our definition, I think it works. You can have compassion for the earth. So now it's your turn. You know, what do you have a passion for? And what are you going to do with that passion? Remember earlier, I gave you a formula. Take what you are passionate about. Let your values direct you to a compassionate objective. Well, you're probably scratching your head. How can I do this? Well, actually, this might sound familiar to you. Let me give you a clue. We have our chart and compass program quite regularly here at the church. The compass represents our values, right? You put the passion of our church, all our members together, and we reach our goals. So that's really what I'm asking you to do. So on a personal basis, think about your compass, what your values are, add your passion to it, and if you look close enough, I think you'll find compassion. Good luck.
Thank you, Charlie.